We like to imagine the internet floating somewhere above us, an invisible, indestructible cloud. But the reality is entirely physical, extremely wet, and sitting directly in the mud on the ocean floor. Over 1.3 million kilometers of fiber optic cable crisscross that mud. Those physical lines carry 99% of all intercontinental digital communication. Every time an international bank transfer clears or a classified government email sends, it travels through a system currently moving $3.65 quadrillion in financial transactions every single year. You might expect the infrastructure protecting those quadrillions to look like massive, impenetrable steel pipelines. They are actually about the thickness of a garden hose. Inside, the core carrying the light that makes up the internet is made of glass threads as thin as a human hair, wrapped in a bit of copper and waterproofed. Because they are completely unshielded, the International Cable Protection Committee logs over 170 cable failures every single year. That means these lines snap an average of almost 4 times a week. To understand how exposed the modern economy actually is, we have to stop looking at the sky and start mapping the physical choke points far beneath the surface. The physical geography of the Earth forces our cables into terrifying bottlenecks. The most dangerous concentration of them all lies in the Red Sea. Roughly 17% of all global internet traffic funnels through this narrow strip of water. If you look at the data traveling specifically between Europe and Asia, a staggering 90% is crammed into this exact same trench. In early 2024, a cargo ship named the Rubimar was struck by a Houthi missile in those exact waters. As the abandoned ship drifted and sank, its massive anchor dropped to the seafloor. It dragged across the rock, slicing cleanly through 3 major data routes, the AAE1, the EIG, and the CCOM cables. A single accidental anchor drag in a narrow channel instantly erased 25% of all internet traffic flowing between Asia, Europe, and the Middle East. While drifting ships cause accidental damage, the situation in the Baltic Sea reveals a more deliberate threat. In November 2024, 2 critical cables, the Sea Lion 1 and the BCS East-West Interlink, went dark almost simultaneously. There were no underwater earthquakes in the area. Investigators tracked a Chinese-registered vessel called the Yipeng 3. According to the data, the ship dropped its anchor and kept sailing forward, pulling that massive iron hook through the seabed for over 100 miles, ripping straight through the lifelines connecting Finland, Germany, and Lithuania. Defense ministers called the act hybrid warfare. We now regularly track Russian spy ships like the Yantar, hovering over transatlantic cable routes with deep-sea submersibles, designed to tap or cut fiber optics. The seabed has transformed into an active military battlefield, giving adversarial navies the power to physically unplug whole nations. Most of the world relies on overlapping networks to absorb these cuts. But zooming out to the vast Pacific Ocean, the island nation of Tonga relies on exactly one 55-mile thread connecting it to the rest of the planet. In January 2022, an underwater volcanic eruption ripped that singular physical lifeline apart. The country ceased to exist on the digital map. For 5 agonizing weeks, electronic banking stopped, international disaster relief stalled, and families couldn't even check if their loved ones had survived. Organizing the physical repair ship took weeks for a painfully ironic reason. The communication lines required to dispatch the crew were sitting broken at the bottom of the ocean. Having recognized how exposed these choke points are, tech giants like Meta and Google are spending billions to bypass the geopolitical crosshairs entirely by laying thousands of miles of their own private networks. Over the last decade, these companies went from owning a fraction of a single line to dominating the industry. The physical infrastructure of human knowledge is shifting from a public utility into the private property of a few billionaires. Yet all of this expansion runs headfirst into a glaring physical limitation: the wildly inadequate global fleet of specialized repair ships. There are only a few dozen of these vessels on Earth. When a cable snaps in a heavily contested conflict zone like the Red Sea or the Taiwan Strait, these slow, unarmed civilian repair crews simply cannot safely enter the waters to fix them. We have built the most advanced civilization in history, yet its survival depends entirely on a few dozen ships a handful of unprotected glass threads resting in the dark, and the hope that an anchor doesn't drop in the wrong place.